At that November meeting, this pastor and his dear wife, your pastor and his dear wife, were sitting to my left. There was some kind of connection that happened between us during that service. You don't know how many times I've thought about your faces since and how much your connection meant to me. It was more than that you intellectually understood what I was saying. It was that you knew what I was saying. And I've thought about this meeting a lot, more than I have a series of services in a long time. And I've got some ideas about how I want the weekend to go. But if it just ends up being my ideas that I'm trying to develop, it'll fall. As excited as I've been and as spiritual as I've sensed in trying to prepare for this meeting, please pray. Please do pray. I think there's something for us here this weekend. I sense that some way. But if the Spirit's not in the middle of it, it won't happen. I don't so much want to talk to you this weekend about doctrinal truths. I don't want to try to explain again to you the intricacies of the differences in sovereign grace and other things. I know we're supposed to preach Christ and Him crucified, and that has haunted me as I've thought about this weekend. That I've got to preach Christ and Him crucified, or it's not right. But I want to go broader than the doctrines of grace and the things that we hold so dear to our hearts and those truths that set us free and magnify Christ who is truth. I want to this weekend to talk about Christianity. There's a distinction in my way of thinking between primitive Baptist and Christianity. I don't think they're always synonymous. But as I was struggling, even this morning, I was trying to reconcile in my mind. So I'm going to start out with about the shortest version you've ever heard of Saved by Grace. Because we got to have that. If we don't have that, the other things I'll talk about this weekend, they'll just be social issues and they'll be those kind of things. But if the motivation is there, that it's because of Him that I want to be Christian, that I want to be Christ-like, that I want to follow Him, if it's because of Him and what He's done, then that's the distinction. It's more than social services. It's more than helping fellow man. It's the motive behind it. It's the heart that senses Him and says, Lord, what would you have me to do? But to have that intense question, not just intellectually, but from the heart, Lord, I owe you so much. What could I do? How could I tell you how much I love you? How could I go beyond telling you and show you how much I love you? So then, we're going to start out once upon a time. A long time ago, before there was any such thing as time, in a faraway place, before there was any such thing as place, there was God. And you see, He hadn't made any of those things, time and place, but He existed. All three of Him. That's kind of a crazy way to say something, isn't it? Oh, the three are one, that there are three. And see, he's pastor finding out. We can try to explain all that, but it's somewhere out there, way bigger than me. But this three-person Godhead, for some unexplainable reason, made a decision to create. He'd been from eternity past just fine without creation. It didn't make him any more than he'd ever been, but for some reason, in this long ago time in this faraway place, before there was time and place, God said to God, let us make man. Now, he made a place for man, and he made man in time, and he had to do a lot of things, but I think his purpose was let us make man. And I think his purpose for making man, I believe this from the depths of my soul. I can't particularly defend it with chapter and verse. I think the purpose in God's eternal mind for creation was 6 hours on a cross. That's the only sense I can get out of why he would have done it. 6 hours on a cross. I think that's history's event. I think that's eternity's event. I think there's no other way for God to express himself to his creation that could empower him, let us envision him with any more understanding than the love that was involved in 6 hours on a cross. That the Father would send his Son, that the Father would create, that the Father would know that the creation would crash and fall and rebel. And even knowing that, blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who has blessed us with all spiritual blessings in heavenly places in Christ. That word blessed is from the Greek word eulogio, where we get our English word eulogy. It means to speak well of. That's what you do with a eulogy. You speak well of the one that's departed. You don't tell everything you know about him. You tell things that you could speak well of. Speak well, blessed be, speak well of our Father, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, because he has blessed us. He spoke well of us, I believe individually, of whom the whole family of God is named. Our names in the Lamb's Book of Life. God spoke well of us in something we've come to call a covenant of grace before the world began. Individually, he called your name. He knew you. You were a treasure to him. He gave you, entrusted you to his Son, Jesus Christ. Beyond that, he put you in Jesus Christ. And from that position of being in Jesus Christ, you have salvation to be with him forever. That we will sing that new song. I said eternity is about 6 hours on a cross. We'll sing that new song, for thou wast slain and hast redeemed us by thy blood out of every nation, kindred, tribe, and tongue under heaven. That's the eternity song about 6 hours on a cross. When that begins to impact us as to what Christ endured, as well as we can understand such a thing as that, when it kind of hits you in the heart that he did that for me, it leads me to a frame of mind where I, like Saul of Tarsus, would fall on my face and say, Lord, what would you have me to do? I think that 6 hours on a cross and that holy God who hung on that cross is the inspiration for Christianity. It's the motive of who we should be and what we should be in his world that he's placed us in until he takes us to his world beyond. So then, what would you have me to do, Lord? Let's start this weekend with this idea. God has equipped you with the power to change your world. Equipped you with the power to change his world that you now dwell in. I think that's true. And I think that's a mission for life. And I think that's Christianity, that you can change your world. Hebrews chapter 13. Be careful to entertain angels, for thereby be careful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares. Unawares, not realizing it. Among us, evidently. Perhaps you talked to one today. Perhaps I gave one a look on the way down here. Be careful. Be careful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares. Let me take that a step farther. Perhaps stretching scriptures a little bit, I'll confess to that. Be careful to entertain strangers, for some have thereby entertained Jesus unawares. You reckon that's possible? If you thought he was wandering around here, might show up at the grocery store. Maybe he's here tonight in church with us. And we don't know who he is, and we don't know which one he is. Would it change you? If you really thought you might be talking to him, is that possible? Now, I don't know that he's going to come back and do that. I don't have a lot of scriptural basis to present that. I do believe that angels are among us, but what if he showed up? He's done it before. In Abraham's day, there were 3 men, it says. There were 3 men that came to Abraham. That's what it says. That's what he saw, I think. But as it turned out, one of those men that came to Abraham was the capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D. In the King James Bible, when you find all caps, L-O-R-D, that's Jehovah. That's God. One of them was God. And the other 2 of those men went on to Sodom and Gomorrah and took care of things over there. They turned out to be angels. When they show up, Abraham doesn't know who they are, but he entertains them. He prepares a meal, and they have a conversation. And Abraham, in one setting, entertained angels and Jesus unawares. Moses sees that bush burning. It's a fascinating thing. It's the physical concept that it just keeps burning and won't go out. That's what attracts his attention to it. It just keeps burning, keeps burning, keeps burning. It doesn't tell us how many days he watched it. I'm stretching things there too, probably. But anyway, he watched it long enough, he became very curious, so he's going to approach this thing and see what's going on. It turned out it wasn't a thing, was it? It said God spoke to him out of that bush. Take your shoes off, you're on holy ground. I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I mean, we can go there and you tell him I am sent you. That's who sent you. It is God. Did Moses know that before he got there? Unawares. He was in the presence of God. Joshua, the next generation, they've come across the Jordan River. It's time to take Jericho, and there's a man armed. He's a mighty powerful-looking man, appears to be, and Joshua's concerned whether you're with us or for our adversaries. And he walks up to that man and said, "Who are you?" He said, "I'm the captain of the Lord's host," capital C, captain. What does that mean? Well, it said that Joshua worshiped him. If he had been an angel, he'd have corrected Joshua. The angel spoke to John, and John bowed to the angel and said, "Oh, don't worship me, worship Jesus." He wasn't corrected. What was told to him at that point, take off your shoes, you're on holy ground. Same thing that God had said to Moses the generation before. I think he talked with God. I think throughout the scriptures we can see these things. The scholars have come to call it a theophany. It's the appearance of Christ in the presence of men. And whether it still happens or not, I don't know. But just in case. What do I mean just in case? What am I thinking about? Where's my mind? Don't you believe he's here tonight? Have you been praying for him to be here tonight? Do you mean that prayer? Is it a fairy tale? Is he always with us, never leave us nor forsake us? Lo, I'll be with you always, even to the end of the world. I will not leave you comfortless. I will come to you. Do we believe he's here? He is here. Whether you see him or not, he is here all the time with you. But we tend to not think about what we can't see. And would it change my behavior if he was here with me all the time? Oh, when he came into this world, the world was made by him, but the world knew him not. After his resurrection even, Mary sees him and thinks he's the gardener. And then they go fishing and they see him on the shore and they don't recognize who he is. There's all kind of accounts where they saw him and didn't know who he was when they knew who he was. They didn't know who he was oftentimes when he was here. Maybe he's still hanging around. Maybe he is in and out pretty regular. Maybe we don't know what kind of, when he came the first time, he didn't come all decorated like you'd expect God to be decorated, did he? He came pretty plain. Kind of not much to notice, it seems like. Oh, he was plenty to notice, but you had to be looking a little harder if you're going to see in him who he really is and what he really is. So the idea that we might run into him somewhere. Let's drop that thought for just a second and let's go in a different direction. We're talking about the power to change the world. What if there are a couple of horrible things? What if you had great power and didn't use it for good? Or what if you had great power and used it for evil? One's about as bad as the other. When I was a child, I read a book. I don't have any idea what the name of the book was, don't know who the author was, but the book is still somewhere in this head. It still haunts me. There was a wicked little boy in the book, and he could read your mind if he was paying attention. Now, his mind wandered a lot of times, but if he happened to be focused on you and you thought something bad about him, there was another little boy who was riding his bicycle through town, and he thought something bad about this bad boy who was worth thinking bad things about. If you read the book and understood who he was, oh, you would have thought bad. I thought bad things about him when reading the book. This little boy thought something bad about the other little boy, and he was happened to be paying attention, and he caught that thought. You know what he had him do? He was riding his bicycle. He had to pedal faster, and it was like Columbus's day. I mean, Christopher Columbus, he may have had it right. I mean, there's an edge out there somewhere, and this boy rode his bicycle off the edge. Oh, it's horrible. I don't know where he went, but he was off the edge, and he was gone. Because this kid had great power, and he used it for evil. None of that's in the Bible. But what if you had great power and didn't use it for good? We spend all day, every day, making choices. Little choices and bigger choices and big choices. And some of them don't seem to amount to much, and some of them maybe would have amounted to more if we'd made the right choice. And who knows but what you were called to the kingdom for such a time as this? That's what Nehemiah said to Esther. The choice she made that day, it was a huge choice. It was a big choice. It made a huge difference. It saved the people. Now, God would have saved them some other way. It even says that there. But she made a choice that day that made a huge difference. I one time wrote a letter to Mike Pence. Put that in there. He claimed to be a Christian. Who knows but what this is your day, that you were called to the kingdom for such a time as this. I didn't get any answer, and he didn't seem to take any action. But a choice that you make that might change the world. Now, you're not in a position to change the world, you might say, but maybe you're in a bigger position than what you realize. Do you have the power to change the world? Has God equipped you with what it would take to change the world? I submit to you that he has. I think he's put his very character inside you at born again. Now, the born again part, it's all of God. There's no cooperation in that. There's no collaboration in that. There's no help needed in that. That's an act of God, a sovereign, immediate act of God. Holy Spirit, unassisted regeneration. But then once he does that, he puts himself in you, he resides in there, and his character becomes your character. Now, you still got that old guy to deal with, but you got this new creature in you. That's love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. That's who you are. Is there any power in those words? You think love can change the world? I'll bet it'd be a little different if more people were trying it. What do you think? You think there's anybody who needs some joy and is peace pretty rare? How about some long suffering? That's patience. Oh, you're getting, that's troubling, preacher. I'm not good at that. You know what Jesus said? In your patience, you can possess your soul. What a line, Jesus. In your patience, you can take a hold. In your patience, you can get a grip on you. Well, that's the last one. That temperance thing, that's self-control. That He's put within you what it would take to be like Him. You are like Him. You have His character, His nature within you. Is that not power? Is that not somebody with a lot of potential who would have God within that person, within you? Take this personal, that you have within you the character of God. That kind of power, and you don't use it for good? You're wasting your life. I'm wasting my life. And beyond those 9 character traits that are God Himself that's within you, there's 7 special kind of gifts that He gives to individuals in His church. There's the gift of prophecy and the gift of ministry. That prophecy, that's just to be able to proclaim things that can't be known in a natural way. Study the Word out. You don't have to be able to tell the future to have the gift of prophecy. If you can talk about a resurrection, that can't be known naturally, but I'll tell you what, you go to talking about that, and somebody might perk up and listen. I don't know if they would or wouldn't. But maybe you don't have that gift. What about the gift of ministry? That's not just to stand in the pulpit. The word means serve, to serve your fellow man. Those in need, the gift of prophecy, the gift of ministry, the gift of teaching, the gift of exhortation, that's encouragement. Any of you remember how to smile? We kind of lose that in this old world, don't we? What could a smile do? Who knows? Who knows? Might stop somebody from taking their life. Nah. Who knows? You have a choice. Smile or frown. The gift of exhortation. The gift of giving. The gift of ruling. That's not to be the boss. That's to lead in the practice of good works. I don't have time for the sermon on the spiritual gifts, but you've got some of these. The gift of showing mercy. Well, that's a lost art, isn't it? You do have what it takes to change the world. God's put it in you. And besides the 9 character traits you have, you're equipped in some special way in 1 or 2 of these categories to change the world that you live in. So, if you knew Jesus was watching, would your choices be different? If you knew you had the power to change the world, would you go on wasting the rest of your life? I don't mean that as harsh as it came out. I'm sorry. I make a lot of choices every day. And most of them don't have Jesus even in the consideration of that choice. Beyond the gift of born again that's all by God, I think these other things are more in the category of collaboration, and that's not a Bible word, but I do believe it's a Bible concept. I think that's when you work out what He's working in. I think that's when you coordinate with the Spirit instead of walking away from Him and quenching Him. I think that's when you use the power He's given you to start trying to change the world that you're in. Do you have a hunger for meaning? Wish your life was worth something? Feel kind of useless some days? Sometimes after 71 years, do you look back on your life and cry? Because you've wasted so much of it. So many opportunities. So many choices I didn't make and so many other choices I did make. God gives me about that much time. That's all I got compared to eternity. To prove to Him I love Him. To show Him what He means to me. To say thank you for the cross. Oh, when we get to heaven, it's not going to be hard up there. I don't visualize it being difficult to try to make the right choice up there. It's just I could say come natural, but maybe it'll come spiritual. I don't know the right word. I don't know much about heaven, but I don't think there's going to be as much of a battle up there as to what choice I make and how I live my life. Would you like to change this messed up world? Do you see some messed up things about it? Do you think it'd be better if it were a little different, a little more like Him, if I were a little more like Him, if I made some choices to bring that to pass? Can a choice make a difference? I mean, just a simple choice. Let's think about some Bible characters. Let's think about the lineage of Christ. Let's think about 4 women in the lineage of Christ. We'll start with a character named Rachel. Now, she wasn't Christ's mother or grandmother, but she was like his great, and I couldn't count how many greats, grandmother. You know how all that came to be? Rachel made a choice one day. There was a stranger, a servant of Abraham. He was on a mission. He was looking for a wife for Isaac. And he had no idea where he was or who he was looking for. He'd never been to this place before, never seen these people before, didn't have any idea who she was, but God who knew she was. And he knew God who knew she was. And he gave God this wild proposition. I mean, it was so way out there that nobody's ever going to do that. Abraham's servant, why didn't you give God something easier? His proposition. He's got this caravan of camels that are carrying all kind of gifts for whoever this bride-to-be might be, but Rachel doesn't know that, and he comes up to this well, and he said, here's my plan, God. It's going to be sort of like this. I'm going to stand here by this well, and I'm going to look right thirsty. And then whoever comes out, whichever young maid comes out that's right for Isaac, I'm going to say, could you give me a drink? And whichever the right one is, that she'll go past giving me a drink, and she'll say, yeah, I'll give you a drink, and I'll water all you camels. Woo. Now, you know anybody's going to do that for a stranger. Well, he comes up there, and he said, could you give me a drink? And it says she took her trough, and he drank some out of her trough, and then she said, how about I water all you camels, too? Wonder how much a camel can drink. I don't know for sure how many he had, but here's all these camels there, and they've come across the wilderness, across the desert, and their tongues are hanging out, and they are thirsty. And she gets a pitcher of water, and she pours it in the trough, and that first one laps that up. You know what I figure that hump's for? Now, this isn't. I don't know a lot about camels, and I'm not a camel biologist, but my way of thinking, a country boy's way of thinking, it's got to be for something, and he can get across the Sahara Desert without a drink. It's got to be, that's his water tank, isn't it? Well, I don't think that's right. Don't Google that. Anyway, that's what I've got pictured in this wild story that's in my head. I think different, you can tell that already. And all these hungry camels with these empty water tanks, and she waters all of them. You know what she got out of that? Jesus is going to be her grandboy someday. She made a choice. She watered all those thirsty camels in the next generation. That was Rebecca in that generation, wasn't it? I'm sorry. When I got to the next generation, then I thought of Rachel. Forgive me. Y'all keep me in line. That was Rebecca. Here comes Rachel. Rachel, she's the one Jacob loved. He worked 7 years for her. And it's the wedding night. And they have the wedding, and his father-in-law double-crosses him. And instead of waking up the next morning and it being Rachel, it's Leah. You know what my Bible says? You can go and read this. Let me see. It's in Genesis 29:25. It says, "Behold, it was Leah." Whoa. That's a good start to a marriage, isn't it? The morning after, behold, it was Leah. That's really not that funny now, really, is it? It's not. It really is not. I'm laughing too, but that's not funny. Can you imagine poor old Leah? And the fight starts right there in front of her. He attacks his father-in-law, so to speak, about, what have you done to me? That's a good start to a marriage. You know what Leah did? She made a choice. She stuck with that no good man. And she had Reuben, and she had Simeon, and she had Levi, and then she had Judah. You know who Jesus is? He's the Lion of the tribe of Judah. She got to be Jesus' grandmother with a choice she made to stick with that man. You can go on through and you can see Rahab and the choice she made with the spies, and you can see the choice that Ruth made also in the lineage. You can see these choices that these women made and ended up with that choice. What was Ruth's choice? She chose to stay with that bitter old woman, Naomi. That's a hard choice, wasn't it? Entreat me not to leave thee, nor to return from following after thee. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. She made a choice to go with Naomi. Andrew made a choice to go find Peter. Peter made a choice to loan Jesus his boat for a sermon. By the time that scene's over, Peter makes another choice. He leaves the greatest day of fishing that's ever been, and he follows Jesus. He made a choice. The widow woman made a choice. The prophet comes in and says, fix me a cake. She didn't have enough but to fix one cake, and she's going to split it with her son, and they're going to die. The prophet said again, make me a cake. She made him a cake. And the next day there's still a handful of meal, and the next day there's a handful of meal, and the next day for perhaps 3 years or so there's a handful of meal. She made a choice, and she didn't eat that one cake with her son and die. Lots of choices. Nicodemus made a choice to come to Jesus by night. It wasn't very brave, was it? Nicodemus made another choice, very bold choice. It was Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea that wrapped Jesus' body. How many people got their name in the book by the choices they made? There's a story in God's Word, an account by Jesus Christ we've come to call the character of the Good Samaritan. We don't know his real name, but everybody knows him. You don't have to be Christian to know the Good Samaritan. There's Good Samaritan laws. There's Good Samaritan, the idea is known all over the world of the Good Samaritan who made a choice. There was a priest and a Levite. They made a choice that day too. They passed by on the other side. That's the choice they made. But then this man made a choice, and he got that man out of the ditch. I wonder why he was there. I bet he's passed out on drugs. What do you think? He probably made his bed. He needs to sleep in it. That's the way I got it figured. That may be the way the priest and the Levite thought. This man seems to ask no questions. He's a no good Samaritan to start with. He's used to not having much respect, but he shows a lot of love, and he gets this man out of the ditch, and he brings him to the inn, and he tells the host of the inn there, you take care of him, and here's enough money, and if that's not enough, I'll be back by, and I'll make it right. And wonder if that man, that old beat-up man, was the only one in that inn that day. Wonder if anybody saw that happen. Wonder what kind of ramifications could have happened from that scene. Wonder if it affected that host of that inn, what he had just seen happen. Do choices make difference? Can choices make differences that you never see, that never got told about in the Bible? We have words to describe the differences that something little can make. We call it a domino effect. The domino effect, you remember dominoes. Maybe you're not old enough. Maybe you're too young to. Back when I was a boy, they came in a little box, and they were little tiles about that tall and about that wide and just not very thick. And you could stand those little things up, and you could start standing them right next to each other, about an inch apart, and you start right here, and you take it out through that door back there and across out there, and then you bring it back down this side, and you'd bring it back up where you started, and then the domino effect, you touch that first one. And he falls, and he knocks the next one over, and he knocks the next one over, and if you're about 5, you chase them as they run through there, and you're just squealing your lungs out, and that's the domino effect, where one thing started something else that started something else, the ripple effect. The ripple effect. Here's the ripple effect. You run about 6 inches of water in your bathtub, and you take a quarter, and you drop it right out there as best you can tell, right in the middle. And there's a ripple. And then there's another one. It's magic. And there's another one, and there's another one, and there's another one. And about that time, that first one hits the side of the tub. And it ricochets back, and it starts hitting the other ones, and they make ripples. And then about that time, these going long ways, they hit the end of the tub, and they start backing. Whoa, look at that. From one little ripple, the snowball effect. You know the snowball effect. You take a good wet snow, and you get some, and you pack it in between your gloves, and you start rolling it. And before long, you've got a ball you can't push anymore, so you have to stop. That's all you can do with that one. And then you start rolling up another one, and you don't get it. You got to pick this one up, even you and your 2 or 3 buddies, but you got to pick it up and set it on that one. Then you make that little one, and then you go get the hat, and then you put the carrot in his nose, and all of a sudden you've got Frosty. That's the snowball effect. The butterfly effect. You see, these are everywhere. They're everywhere. What's the butterfly effect? That's a weird one. That a butterfly here in Georgia can flap its wings, and eventually that current of air that started in motion when that butterfly flapped his wings can turn into a typhoon in the South Pacific. I don't know about that one. But that's science. They say that can happen. They say that's a theory that can explain weather. That it's not just chaos, it was a butterfly that started it all. I don't know about all that stuff. But I do know that sometimes one little thing this first or second domino here had no idea what went on out there as it circled around. Had no idea it'd be a part of a chain that could last that long and do so much. And what if God was behind it? You know, if God was behind it, he was empowering this chain, what if you could take that last domino and stand it back up and they'd all stand back up? Ooh, that'd be a trick, wouldn't it? What if God could do something like that with some little something that I do? The very idea that a choice I would make a difference in God's world. Jesus must needs go through Samaria because he had an appointment to keep, I believe, with a particular person. And he told her everything she'd ever done, the bad stuff. And she's so overwhelmed with that conversation that before it's over, she goes back to her city and she tells her city, come meet a man that told me everything I've ever done. That's not much to brag about, is it? And they come, and it says that because of her, they believed, but then when they heard him, they really believed. What if you were on a mission to tell Atlanta? One person at a time. What if you were that wild Gadarean who lived in his insanity for his life in the tombs, cutting himself, and chains couldn't hold him, and all of a sudden he's in his right mind, and he says to Jesus, I want to follow you. And how many times did Jesus say to people, follow me? This man says, I want to follow you, and Jesus said, no, here's what I want you to do. You go tell your friends and neighbors all the great things that I've done for you. Have you made that choice lately? Regularly? Do you talk about him enough? What if it was him that you met and you started talking to him about him? Wouldn't that be cool? Or what if it was him you met and you started talking to him about Georgia football? I'm not against Georgia football. But there are more Christ-like things we can talk about. And I know we're right in the middle of March Madness, and where I come from, we make our balls round because that's the way balls are supposed to be. Everybody knows that. So you see, I'm a little afflicted too. and not talking about Jesus, not making every choice I could, every moment of every day. What if somebody's watching? Besides the possibility of being Jesus, what if it's one of his little ones that's thirsty or hungry or a stranger? I've lost track of how many funerals I've preached of people who have taken their own life in Dawson Springs, Kentucky, Mayberry, USA, 2,500 population, and they're falling out like flies because they have no meaning to life. They have nobody that cares. They have no friend. Have you ever talked on the phone with a man who's working the bolt of his shotgun while you're talking to him? Have you ever begged a person to quit taking the pills until I can get to you and we can talk? Would you please just stop taking the pills? Give me time to get there. Have you ever felt the helplessness that they feel? No, you haven't probably, unless you have maybe. I don't know. There's people out there that are desperate. In some sense, we are all desperate, in need of somebody to show me the character of Christ, that spirit within them, of somebody to use their gift to help me, of somebody to smile at me when I'm discouraged. We live in an empty world. And the Bible describes the empty world. Solomon knew the empty world. He said all is vanity, that's emptiness, nothingness, and vexation of spirit. He had everything and he had nothing. And that's the world we live in. That under the sun, all is vanity and vexation of spirit. And we need to make a difference. You can make a difference in your life. If you'll start reaching out to others, it'll make a difference in you, and it'll make a difference in Jesus' big old world. That we can change the world. The people are watching. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 12. Having your conversation, that's bigger than what you're saying. It's a broader term than that. It's your entire lifestyle. It's the manner of living. It's the way you live your life. Having your conversation honest among the Gentiles. That honest means real. Without the Christian hypocrisy that plagues America. If the Lord continues to lead me, that'll be tomorrow morning's sermon. Real, honest. Being who you are, what He's made you to be, what He's equipped you to do. Having your conversation honest among the Gentiles, that whereas they speak against you as evildoers, everybody you talk to is not going to be Jesus. And we have permission to walk away. He walked away. They'll speak evil of you. And they'll mock you. And a young man I took with me down here to Georgia on one preaching trip. He thought the Lord was called him to preach. It didn't work out that way, it seemed. His own family, a Christian family, was calling him Johnny Christian because he was too spiritual-minded to be any earthly good. And he opened his heart to me on that trip down here and back. It's one of the best weekends I've ever had with this young man who was being persecuted by a Christian family for thinking he might be called to preach. It's not going to be a bed of roses, perhaps, to make the choice that could be the choice for today that would change His kingdom. And some of them will and some of them won't. And what if I was to make a choice that changed Jesus' world? You know, the wisest thing he could do is never let me know about it. I'd be useless. If my name was in that book, I'd flip to that page every morning and start reading right there. I think on purpose sometimes He doesn't let us see the effects of being a domino, of flapping our wings one time and wondering what that could have done. That's okay. As long as it's okay, if I don't get discouraged and quit because I see no results or no effectiveness. But I look back over 71 years and I think, Lord, what have I done? And maybe there's one or two things that could have happened. When we get to heaven, eternity's a long time. What if He just takes us back step by step, every choice I ever made? Now look what could have happened if you'd have done that. Sorry, Lord. Back to our verse. Having your conversation honest among the Gentiles, that whereas they speak against you as evildoers, they may, by your good works, which they shall behold. By your good works, which they shall behold, though they're speaking against you as if you're the evildoer, they're going to notice. Now, they're not going to notice if you're not any different to the rest of the world. But if you're making choices that are different to the world's choices, they're going to notice. They may, by your good works, which they shall behold, glorify God in the day of visitation. I'm not exactly sure what that means. I could be off on this, but I think that's kind of like when Jesus visited Saul of Tarsus on the road to Damascus, and suddenly he's a new creature with a new attitude, a new want to, and a new can do, and he's got all this in him, and he's saying, Lord, what would you have me to do? I think that's a day of visitation. And I think that's probably the one being talked about here. Not particularly just Saul of Tarsus, but all of his children that he'll sometime come to between conception and natural death and give them born again, and they become a big question mark at that point. What in the world has happened to me? Lord, what would you have me to do? Who am I? And that same guy that's been picking on you and making fun of you, and you know what he might do at that point? He's beheld your good works, and now he's feeling something real crazy in him that he doesn't have any idea what it is. And, old Johnny Christian, he may have known something. He may have had something all along there. I think I'll go ask him in the day of visitation. My father in the ministry, Travis Housley, I could put on, he's one of the short list of the men I admire the most in my life, one of the best men I've ever known. He's not, in his job, he would travel and he would oftentimes share a room with another man, and the other man, when they'd go on these business trips, the other man would go to the bar and he'd come in late back to the room, and one time he came back in the room and he had a little bit too much to drink, but not enough to pass out. He's just good and talky, Kind of lost his inhibitions. Finally brave enough to ask the question, bring up the conversation. He says to Travis, he said, I've been watching you. And Travis said, you have? What have you been watching me for? He said, I've been watching you to see if there's anything to this Christianity thing. Travis is a very stoic man. He shows little emotion very seldom. And when he tells this story, he cries. And he said, at that point, he said to the Lord, under his breath, Lord, why didn't you tell me he was watching? And he said, then this verse came to me, Lord, you did tell me he was watching. And I don't think Travis had done anything terrible in front of that man. He hadn't committed any crimes or broken any big sins. But when you work with a man every day, you see a side of him probably that, sort of like your wife, you kind of get to know the person you're with a lot. And I guess flashed back through Travis's mind one time when he might have not acted just right at work. Anybody else ever had that happen to them? And yeah. And he said, Lord, why didn't you tell me he was watching? He's told us. They're watching. They're listening. They're yearning for something that they don't have, that you do have. You can find meaning to your life. You can change Jesus' world with each choice you make all day long, every day. Am I going to be Christian? More than just carry the banner or hold to the name? Am I going to be like Christ, follow Christ? God bless you. I love you.